in today's episode, we're going to address the question of, do you need to be perfect at all the moves before you can teach them? Should we do a spoiler alert?
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, no, you don't. But we'd like you to listen.
Come on, listen in anyway.
It's a good combo.
It's a fun combo. Do you have to be perfect at all the moves to be a great teacher?
Absolutely, Raph.
That's probably
Absolutely.
one of the most common questions we get asked.
Being very sarcastic listeners.
By people who are aspiring instructors. And yeah, I'm not sure to what extent that goes away for people who are existing instructors, but this is actually a question that came through my feed a few weeks back. So yeah, and because we did the Pilates Police recently, I think to me this is kind of a related topic. You know, it's about people feeling like they need to measure up to some standard, you know, of how they look and how they perform. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I'm vehemently opposed to, I think it's nonsensical that you have to be able to do all the things to be able to teach all the things. It's kind of like where to start with this. And I agree with you, Raph. It does come up. It comes up. We see it coming up people deciding to take the step to become an instructor. So they've fallen in love with Pilates because they've been going to Pilates classes is the usual story, isn't it? And it's my narrative. It's my story as well. I fell in love with Pilates. And when I first fell in love with Pilates, I fell in love with Pilates because I had a sore back, yada, yada. You know, I had fear of flexion, et cetera, and when deciding to do my first instructor training, I did have I wanted to do it because I was so in love with Pilates. Like Pilates made me feel awesome. It was fun, and it's all the things it still is for me. Pilates will always be this for me. It's fun. It's constantly challenging. Like I could go on a rant about why I love Pilates and will always love Pilates until the day I die. And I had an amazing instructor. We know we've talked about Stella Atwood before. We love Stella. Big props to Stellas. This career would not be happening for me if it wasn't for Stella instilling that love of Pilates in me. But when I went into the course, and the reason I did the course with Breathe was because Stella had done her course with Breathe, right, and raved about it. And of course I wanted to be like my instructor. She was also my friend. I was like, I've heard so many good things. It looked like the coolest job. It looked like so much fun. I'm like, how would this not be an awesome job? The whole thing, the whole package was exciting. I do remember, and so this is good for me to reflect on too, because where I'm at in my journey now, it's like, of course it doesn't matter, right? Mm-hmm. Like I when you believe something so much and embody it so much, that you think, oh, is this even a topic anymore? Do you know what I mean? Like I'm a bit with it. So for me, it's good to reflect. And I think this is what doing this episode is helping me do. It's good for me to reflect and step back into those shoes of, Chloe, who walked into, I still remember that first day I walked in and looked around the room, and I was like, I knew some of the exercises that were coming and I knew I could do them. But there was this section of the exercises that I was really freaking nervous to do. So this was the mat work and it was the inversions. Yeah, particularly things like jackknife and corkscrew. Whew, terrified me because I still identified as having a sore back, an injury. I was still fearful of flexion. So you can imagine how I thought about going into corkscrew. So those that don't know corkscrew, basically you lay on your back, you take your legs overhead to about 45 degrees, then you swing them down one side of your body and back up the other and back around, creating a clock face, right?
If rollover and hip twist had a love child.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, love it. So you can imagine, here's me fearful of flexion, and I'm like, I'm going to do what? And I did have this moment of, could I do the course / could I be an instructor if I couldn't / wouldn't / was fearful of those exercises. And I did have that. Amazingly, like obviously I had amazing trainers. Shout out Nick Maz. And who just worked me through it. And so from a fear base, I was able to do, I got over the fear of doing the exercises. Could I do those exercises perfectly? Could I execute them each time? Could I? No, not at all. Not at all. And it never crossed my mind then, though, that I couldn't then teach them. Yeah, I don't know. And sorry to take it over, Raph. I was just thinking there's another story, which is true. I must admit that early on in my career, and I'm talking really early on, like maybe the first year of teaching, maybe the second, I didn't teach snake because I didn't feel like I could do snake myself. Guess what I did? I just stayed back in the studio and just practiced and practiced and practiced. And then
you gave yourself permission to teach it.
I gave myself permission to teach it. Since then, I've evolved to the point that, I was teaching the dismount and I'd never been able to land one yet myself.
Like the control balance into arabesque.
Control balance dismount.
You basically do a backward somersault off the reformer into arabesque.
Yeah. Well, the arabesque is more classical. The Joseph Pilates OG move, you literally roll yourself off. It's a tumble and you roll yourself back on your shoulder. I was teaching that way before I could do it. Way before. I have, and here, dear listeners, I'm sure I've given this secret away before though. I've never done a high bridge on the reformer in my life yet. Not for want of trying. I give it a good old grunty go, but not there yet, and I teach it weekly. So maybe we can break this down. So the very bottom line is you can teach the thing without having to do the thing.
Yeah, I think, your story, I think, is probably pretty common. Like I've really lost track of the number of times that students have come up to me on, when we used to teach face-to-face on the first day of the course and sort of, pulled me aside and kind of like, in a really kind of embarrassed, way, said to me like, oh, I've got a really weak core, or I can't touch my toes, or I can't,
I can't roll up, or I can't. Yeah, it's almost like there's some shame. I was going to say, it's like there's some shame around it, isn't there?
Yeah. It's like, it's kind of the mentality that you should, if you're a Pilates teacher, you should embody, the ideal of, air fucking quotes, Pilates body. Or, it's like one of my favourite.
What's a Pilates body again?
Well, if you've got a body and you do Pilates. But one of my favourite ever little vignettes of my life that I can remember is we used to drop back before. I used to do air travel a lot. We used to drive from Melbourne to Sydney quite a bit, and it's about 900 kilometres, 600 miles. So it's like a full day.
Decent drive.
12-hour drive, by the time you stop for lunch or whatever. Yeah. And there's a place about halfway up called Gundagai, which is a little town about halfway in between. And it's just
on a tucker box?
Yeah, just in the middle of nowhere. And if you go into town there's this little old school, like 1940s, 1950s style Aussie bakery. And, they had and if you're in Australia, you'll know what I'm talking about, and if you're a certain age, Neenish tarts and,
the Neenish. So the Neenish tart, isn't the Neenish tart, is the Neenish tart, is it one colour on one side?
Yeah, it's like pink and brown in half and half, yeah.
Strawberry and chocolate, isn't
icing,
it?
Yeah.
And what's in the middle?
Just jam, I think, or something like that. It's like two biscuits with jam in between.
It's pretty much if you want the ultimate sugar hit in one go. Like, it's funny, you talking about it, Raph, is bringing back actual physical kind of memory at the moment. I feel like I've just had that sugar hit from that first mouthful.
And for amazing. Me, I really am attracted to that kind of white flour, sugar, icing. For me, I don't know, it's maybe just I grew up with it as a kid or something, I don't know what, but I've got a soft spot for it, and I very, very rarely indulge in it. But I particularly have a soft spot for cinnamon donuts.
Oh.
Yeah, and again, I probably don't have them from one year to the next, But every now and then I'm like, oh, I could really go a cinnamon donut.
Like a really good cinnamon donut.
And
Yum.
particularly when they're hot.
Yeah.
And this place, they made incredible cinnamon donuts and like just piled up in this like luxurious, abundant pile of cinnamon donuts. And just in the middle of outback country, it's like it was some ridiculous price, like, $2 for 20 or something. It's just like, just like, are you sure you tell me the right price?
Yeah, I'm going to get 20 donuts.
And so I'm like, okay, I'll take them all. And they were the best donuts. And I always used to look forward to stopping in Gundagai, like, that was a highlight of the trip for me, to stop at this place and get like just the biggest bag of donuts.
Yeah.
And sometimes a niche tart or a rock cake or an apple pie or whatever.
Rock cake. Oh my God, you're bringing back all the vintage memories for me here, Raph.
But the woman there who must have been the baker, I guess, she was serving, and she was, quite roly-poly, generously proportioned, and she had this apron on that said, "Never trust a skinny chef." And I was like, damn right. Like, I want someone in the kitchen who cooking the donuts, who loves donuts, who really understands what it is to love donuts and, embodies donutdom, And so, I don't truly subscribe to that philosophy as I never trust a skinny chef, but to me, I don't know, that just really kind of chuffed me somehow. And I think somewhere, although it's kind of a bit tongue-in-cheek and whatever, I think you're buried deep in there somewhere there's a grain of truth, right? And I'm not sure exactly what the grain of truth is, but I think, that in Pilates we have that philosophy as well a lot. It's like, well, you should, in a Pilates instructor, you should look for somebody who's got those long, lean muscles and a strong core and super flexible and graceful and great posture and, moves like a cat and all of these things that we associate, most of them erroneously, with Pilates. We think like, oh, if you look at your Pilates instructor and they don't look like that, it's like, well, they don't sample the product. They can't. They're not legit. They're just kind of like they're not credible. Yeah, is that the way you kind of see it?
Yeah, what a load of bullshit. What the fuck, Raph? No, like I actually...
Yeah, sorry, air quotes.
Like, I'm about to walk out right now, everyone. I'm doing a walkout. No, I think it's... I think it's just bullshit. I think I remember when I moved to Bondi Beach.
World famous Bondi Beach. If you're in Australia, anytime
Bondi
you're
Beach.
outside Australia, anywhere in the world, and you say I'm from Australia, go, Bondi Beach.
Bondi Beach. Well, I actually lived there. My bedroom window for a short period of time looked out over Bondi Beach. I was on the same street, on Campbell Parade, when I was living with my best friend. I really lived the dream there. Now, I absolutely, apart from my blonde hair, I did not look like the typical Bondi client who is generally a good few sizes smaller than me, a lot more tan than me. I trained a lot of models. I trained a lot of actresses, etc. And I was absolutely a popular instructor. Like I'm totally comfortable with saying that. My classes were full, were waitlisted, were in demand by those clientele who were not looking at me and coming to me as an instructor because they wanted to look like me, right? They weren't coming to get abs like me. I mean, I haven't seen my six pack since I thought about the other day. I was probably 15 the last time I had a really defined, had a low enough body fat percentage to have a really defined six pack. I'm strong, in my whole body, my abs are freaking strong, right? Shaman and I did a little tease competition the other day just for fun. The things Pilates instructors do. He only got a couple more than me, which I was actually pretty chuffed at. So, I'm strong. I've got strong abs. I've got all of that. Yeah, I've got a layer of fat over them. Cool, whatever. So this is what I guess I'm trying to get to, Raph, is bust the myth a little that people are looking to a Pilates instructor because they can do a certain thing or look a certain way. Actually, no, my clients were coming to me because of how I made them feel.
Yeah.
Because of how skilled my teaching was, because of my programming, because of my banter, because I genuinely freaking loved them and gave a shit about them. And in fact, most of my clients became really wonderful lifelong friends. It had nothing to do with eye mirroring, like they're seeing a mirror image when looking at me.
Wasn't to do with your thigh gap or...
No, never. And you know what?
Split.
In the whole interaction, so I don't comment on someone else's body. I never comment on, and I don't expect anyone else to comment on my body. I think that's really important, and no one knows someone else's story. They don't know their battle that they might have had with an eating disorder, or the battle they might have had with self-esteem or body image, and people don't know my story either. So I think it's really important that we don't comment on each other's bodies, but we comment on showing up. We comment on effort. We comment on, we cheer each other on. We, talk about each other's days, lives, all of those things, right? So that's why my clients came to me, and these were your Bondi Beach models who are wonderful, beautiful, amazing people. I'm just saying that there's no way they came to me because I looked like what they wanted to look like, because it's just totally different.
I'm going to sort of echo what you said about, like, I think in a broader context, I think that's true. So you're saying, like, okay, models don't require you to look like a model, but I would say that regular folks also don't require you to look like a model, and that I reckon many regular folk who come along to Pilates struggle with their own sort of self-efficacy around body image, around physical strength and flexibility and all of that stuff, and I think this is embodied by the story that I heard once of a woman who, this was, I won't say the name of the studio, but, she I heard this from one of the managers at the studio, that this woman, he went in and did a mystery shop at this studio with a trainer that he didn't know the trainer didn't know him. And so he was sitting there, waiting for this beginner's class, and just happened to be sitting alongside this other woman who was waiting there and got chatting, and turned out that she'd been, she'd had a baby a couple of years back and had been unable to shed the weight and had felt really bad about herself physically, and had kind of gotten into a bit of a depression, and had taken 3 months to screw herself up, the courage to show up, as she felt like in the spotlight in public, looking daggy and feeling daggy and with a bit of baby spew on her shoulder and all of that stuff. And, jiggly bits that she was very ashamed of and whatnot. But this was like a major kind of triumph for her to actually just show up, in this beginner's class. And then during that beginner's class, she wasn't sort of affirmed or validated or even really paid much attention to. And there was just kind of like a show-off instructor up front, doing all their perfect splits and ab curls and with a flat tummy and all of that stuff. And this woman basically just, my friend just basically said to this woman, you could see her visibly shrinking within herself, every time the instructor would kind of flamboyantly demonstrate a perfect move, and the woman just couldn't do it, and obviously not feeling good about it. And he followed up just by checking the attendance records, and she never came back. So that was 3 months of screwing herself up to show up, and then just back to that was a mistake, never come back again. So I think and moreover, we have research evidence that kind of illustrates this, that people, I think, are more inspired by by people who look similar to themselves, but are just a little bit like further along the road of where they want to be, right? So if you're that woman, you're probably more inspired by an instructor who, one, gives a shit and, you know, warmly welcomes you and affirms you and says, like, you are so awesome for being here. And I know this is probably, you know, hard for some of you to show up tonight, and freaking awesome job to be here. And look at you working so hard. That's great. You're going to do great here. You're really going to have success, right? So just affirming them and all of that stuff that I think we've talked about before. But then, like, by an instructor who, as well as giving a shit, just looks like a regular person, you know, but just a bit fitter, healthier, you know, version of a regular person.
Look, and if there's evidence on that, there's evidence. So, you know, I shouldn't bring in my anecdotal over the top, but in my experience, which is totally anecdotal, I just don't know that I agree, because as I said, and all I can talk about is my experience, but my clients, so I think about my Sunday reformer crew, my clients are doing head front and head back. And guys, that means they're like, it's the original JP moves, basically. If we're talking head front, your head is on the headrest, your feet are on the foot bar, right? So and they're doing it with hands off, hands behind their back, pushing the carriage out and in. I couldn't do that to save my life. I still can't get my head far down enough onto the headrest. Head back. You're actually, you're facing up now. Your head is on the headrest, feet are on the foot bar. I can absolutely do head back when I have my hands on the shoulder pads. My clients have their hands off the shoulder pads. So I absolutely am not more proficient in being able to execute the exercises. Nope. I can teach the exercises proficiently. I understand the setup clearly. I understand the cueing clearly. Yeah. But there's no way they're looking at me. Like, I just say, actually, I can bring up my mat masterclass last week. we were doing some really fun, it was a dynamic mat class. Like, literally the students were like, we just want to sweat tonight. I'm like, I can bring it. We're all going to get wet hair. Let's go. And so we were doing lots of, you know, the old Pilates burpee where basically you roll, jump up, those sorts of things. And then we progressed it into a single leg version where basically you're rolling back. And it's so ultimately it could come into a pistol squat, and you might be able, and it's so funny at one point because I can't get up from there with the one foot, and I looked to the screen and people were like sitting there waiting for this demo, and I just turned to the screen and I said, "You waiting for a demo of me doing this? You ain't gonna get it, you guys." And they just cracked up. I said, "This is about exploring your potential. I've explored mine. Come on, let's go." So like own it. So it's not about me going, "Oh my God, I can't do the pistol squat version of the rolling because I know there's no way in freaking hell I can get up without my hands, or even with my hands in a pistol squat. I just don't have the ROM there at the moment. I'm strong, but I just said I've got some, you know me, I'm the human walking plank. I've got some ROM stuff, and that's fine. But I just own it. And if I want to do it, guess what, and get good at it, well, I've just got to freaking practice. But why should I stop my clients from being able to experience something like that and that progression just because I can't do it? See how that then, if I'm going to self-limit myself, I don't only self-limit myself, guess what? I limit my client's potential as well. And I think that's really important. And perhaps that's what's been my driving force because, you know, I think about my Sunday Reformer crew, they're freaking, like, their level of like, it's like, how can I charge them? Like, how can I challenge them next? Do I need to get them levitating? Like, we're kind of to that point where they're the levitating emoji. So if I'm only going to teach them what I can do, am I their teacher anymore? Like, no, they'll need to look for someone who will continue to advance them. So
I'd like to transition into thinking about this slightly differently in terms of, all right, so the idea we've moved a little bit sideways and started talking about kind of, body image, which I think is relevant. But we've, the real thing is like, okay, what makes a great teacher? Right. And so if you want to be a great teacher, like, okay, what are, actually we know a lot, science knows a lot about what the skills, attributes and behaviours and attitudes of a great teacher are, right? And I know this is one of your favourite topics. So I'd like to ask you, like, what is a great teacher?
It comes back to me talking about the I know you've made fun of me saying this concept before, the pushing it out there. So a great teacher makes it about the human beings in front of them, not them. For me, that's the ultimate goal. It is about the experience of the humans in front of me. I need to take my ego out of it. It's about how can I facilitate an empowering experience for those in front of me that allows them to explore their potential. And then, the elements that come into that, well, there's a heap of elements in there, isn't there? I need to know how to effectively enhance motor learning. So I'm going to be putting in there things like early success, collaboration, external cueing. Yeah. And if you're thinking, I haven't heard those words, go back to our cueing elephants episode. So I need to be doing that. I highly believe that facilitating motor learning using those strategies is part of being a great teacher. To me, that's the main things. Just being there for the it's just about the people in front of me.
Yeah, I think you've totally nailed it. It's it's like teaching is a facilitation job, right? So your output is the learning. It's something that other people do, right? So you can't. It's not something that you do, right? If your job is to stack boxes, like, we can look at and see how many boxes is stacked, and that's work that you do. But actually, as a teacher, you're more like a conductor in an orchestra where you don't play an instrument, but your job is to draw out the best performance out of those other people, right? And so their performance is the evidence of your skillfulness. It's not what you do that's important. It's what you enable them to do, and so it's about them. That's the fundamental mindset shift. That it's not fucking about you. It's not about you.
And really and truly believing in your clients at whatever point they come to you at, whether they're the beginner that has never once set foot in a Pilates studio, or whether they're the person that's been doing Pilates for the last 10 years. You can facilitate an amazing experience that helps progress that client at any stage that they're at. But you've got to take your own self-doubt away, or, I say to my students, I can tell when they're doing their prac teaching, I can tell when they've made it all about them or about the clients in front.
And what do you see?
When it's about them, they're apologising for mistakes they've made. I'm like, they don't know what your program is. They don't know. Don't apologise for it. They don't know. Like, they're apologising, they've forgotten something, or they're reading off a piece of paper, or they're apologising for something about themselves. Like, it's like this whole, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, oh, I'm sorry, oh, I'm not ready, oh, I forgot, oh, no, or they're there and they're like, yeah, Raph, freaking awesome. You can get a bit lower in that push-up. I know you can. Woo, go Belle. That's so good. Like, they're individually, they're engaging with the individuals in front of them. They're reading their room. They're challenging individually.
Otherwise known as being present with the humans.
Correct. Because you can't be present, and you absolutely cannot read your room if you are so wrapped up in yourself, because all you're doing is it's just a total head fuck, and you're like, self-doubt, self-doubt, self-doubt. Oh my God, I'm not good enough. Oh my God, I've made a mistake. Oh my God, I've stuffed up.
So I think the solution, if you're out there and you're somebody who's worried that you can't do a particular move at all or well enough to teach it in your mind, is like there's no like strategy where you sort of work on that and, you know, overcome that. It's like, no, just let it go. Like, don't focus on that. That's not what you should be thinking about. That's irrelevant. Focus on your clients.
Correct.
Make it about the clients. Who gives a shit what you can do and can't do? It's irrelevant.
And a little teaching tip as well, which I found very helpful as someone who physically hasn't been able to do to date, a handful of exercises in the repertoire for sure. What I found is a really helpful teaching tip, and this can be done in a face-to-face setting and also online. You're always, always, always going to have a client that you know is capable of doing the full thing, and you know they can nail it, even if it's just just verbal cues online. You know there's someone that's going to be able to do it. So that is my teaching tip. I always utilize as a demo if I can't do the thing, and I highlight someone else to do the thing. Yeah. And what I do is, as they do the thing, I get them to do it on my cues and I teach them through it. Everyone stops and watches, and then they have a go themselves. So they're still getting a demo. So if you're worried, and to be fair, some of those exercises people do like to see a demo first off. So utilize a client, and that's a great way to make that client feel really special as well. I've never ever to date in near on 9 years had a client say, "Oh no, I don't want to do the demo for everyone." They're like, "Let's go."
Chloe, you're awesome at this one. Do you mind showing everyone how it's done?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you do?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. I'd love to. And then I cue them through it. So this clients are still getting to see the cues with the movement. Yeah, it's really effective. And that's also a great tip too, because if you're in a physical space, you might not have a reformer that you can jump on to demo on. And, do you want to kick a client off it to jump on and you do your demo? Ultimately, probably don't. Like, you might have to now and then. And I'm not saying I've never kicked a client off to do a quick demo. If something's really not landing, you're having one of those days, you're like, I've tried every different cue. I don't know. Okay, jump off. I'm just going to jump on quickly. Is that all right? But ultimately, you'd prefer not to. So it's a great thing to have up your teaching sleeve. And you just say, hey, everyone, look over here at Raph. Da-da-da-da-da.
And actually, the research supports that when people are learning by watching someone demonstrating something, they actually learn more effectively when the person that they're watching demonstrate is not perfect.
Right.
And so the reason for that is when, like, if I said to you, okay, we're going to learn how to do a handstand. Well, here's someone in Cirque du Soleil, right? And they just go straight into a perfect handstand, right? And they stay there for 10 minutes without moving a muscle, perfectly still, balancing a glass of champagne on their pointed toes, right? And then they come out of it without spilling the glass of champagne. And I'm like, okay, great, now you do it. And you're like, well, that doesn't really help me out a lot. But if you watch me cue someone who's like sort of okay at handstands through it and go, and then they make a few mistakes along the way and error correct, and you see them get it, that actually helps you learn much more effectively and is for most people much more motivational, because when you look at the Cirque du Soleil person do it perfectly, most people think like, well, I'm never going to freaking be able to do that, like there's like 100,000 hours of practice to get that good.
Yeah,
I'm just not going to do it. So, but when you look at someone who's like, yeah, not bad.
Someone that's in the same class as you,
right, but like you think like, oh yeah, with a bit of practice I could do that.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's much more motivational and improves people's self-efficacy much more when the person who's the demonstrator is more similar to them, like less athletic, as opposed to someone who's like totally perfect at the moves. Yeah.
It was funny. I got sent, it was a teaching tip by an instructor on Instagram, quite well-known instructor, but basically it was how do you know when so the topic was, how do you know when your client is ready to do tendon stretch? Don't jump in, Raph. Don't, please. Just Raph. Don't. Oh, okay. Guys, I'm looking at his face. He's like, oh, God. I'm like, just wait.
Okay.
So.
Right. I'll bite my tongue.
Thank you. And how do you know when your client's ready to do tendon stretch?
I don't know, Chloe. How do you know?
Well, there was this, so there's this, and it's funny because this person, my understanding of this person is that they teach the OG order, but I don't think that this actual, my understanding of stomach massage, so stomach massage in the order comes before tendon stretch, okay? Absolutely, stomach massage, you're seeing that similar C-curve, et cetera. There's actually a cool single leg version of stomach massage as well that we've got images of Joseph teaching, so we know, JP taught it. I'm not so sure that Joseph taught all the other iterations of stomach massage with arms lifted, reach and twist, etc. That seemed to come with the more classical era. And then following the la 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 la, you do this stretch where your hands come to the bar, right? And I'm sure I can't do this stretch from a mobility point of view. Your hands on the bar. But this person's reasoning was, if they can do that stretch, then they are ready to progress to tendon stretch. Now, the person that sent me this said, I just want to say that, no, actually, they just give tendon stretch a crack and then they practice it and get better at it. That's when you know you're ready to do tendon stretch. Like, it's these nonsensical bullshit rules.
Yeah. Obstacles,
right? Where it's like, give a crack. You can give a crack to any of the exercises. Yeah. Sure, there might, when we're thinking about facilitating motor learning for a beginner and we want to think of early success, do we do tendon stretch with them on their first Pilates class ever on a reformer? Probably not. We want to, facilitate an experience where they're getting used to all the moving parts and this and that, right? Cool. That would be my reasoning, to not give someone tendon stretch yet. Yeah. But not because they can't do a stretch on the reformer. I was just like, it's these kind of silly things that I think are what then breeds into the self-doubt of instructors or new instructors. And it's that same fear of, I'm too nervous to put myself out on Instagram doing an exercise because I'm not going to look perfect, or et cetera, and I'm going to get shamed, or I'm going to be told I shouldn't be doing that. That's the bullshit that needs to
it's paradoxical because
end.
In order to stop that shaming and normalise like normal people doing these exercises in a normal way with normal range of motion and whatever, it's like we've got to put ourselves out there doing it normally, So it's like the chicken and the egg sort of thing, but it's like, okay, it's kind of shameful to do that because there are people that might have a go at you, but the only way to overcome that is for the majority of people to start doing it.
I told you how nervous I was, wasn't I, when my Instagram content went from it being snippets of my clients doing amazing things to actually, I'd moved into more of the realm of being a teacher trainer. So all of a sudden actually content that I had was not of my clients. Content that I had was of me teaching. And I remember the first time I put up a snippet of me teaching from one of our courses, I was so freaking, I almost deleted it just because I was like, what's the reception going to be like? I hadn't put it out there before. It had all been behind closed doors before that. Well, what if, I didn't need to be nervous, of course, and then even if some people didn't like my way of teaching, well, so what? How's, if we're constantly trying to please everyone, we're going to run ourselves ragged.
Who was that said, or, it doesn't matter who it was, but some very wise person said, like, why are we trying to please people that we wouldn't take advice from them? Like we don't care what, like, why do we care?
I told you about the meme, that the writing on the wall that basically said, yeah, I told you this one. Why am I trying to get everyone to like me? I don't even like everyone.
Yeah. That's the basic sentiment. It's like, why do you give a shit about these people?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah. So I think the bottom line is you can absolutely be an amazing instructor, an amazing teacher, and, amazing facilitator of giving an empowering experience to the human beings in front of you, and you yourself not being able to do all the moves or do the full expression of the movement or whatever.
I've just got a few questions I'd like to finish off with. They're not really questions for you. They're kind of rhetorical questions.
Okay.
But so if it were the case that you needed to be perfect at all the moves to be a great teacher, what about the situation where, say, Ramana was in her 70s, couldn't do most of the moves because she put on weight, lost mobility, didn't work out, I don't know what. But I watch her walking around in those videos and she doesn't ever do the moves. Does that make her a bad teacher at that point in her career?
Absolutely not. And I saw incredible footage. I'm thinking of the elders. Jay Grimes. And I love Jay Grimes. I really do. He's so like snappy with his teaching and just, takes no prisoners. Minimal cueing. Some really awesome OG moves. Like I've really enjoyed Jay Grimes' teaching and what I've seen of it. And yeah, I saw he did a big, a workshop, I guess, the other day because I saw it came up on their Instagram, and he was literally sat on it. And Jay's not like, the elders.
In his 80s now.
Yeah, they're old now, and he was sat on his chair in front, like it was online. So he was sat on his chair up in front of the screen, and he was there, and he was making those clients work freaking hard. And he's So
does that make him a bad teacher if he can't do the splits today? Like,
absolutely. And it's funny actually. Who was it that said Heath? Heath sent me. Heath reckons Joseph couldn't actually do it. Heath reckons there's a few moves that JP couldn't do himself because there's this series of images where it's actually not Joseph. It's someone else. And I remember Heath going, yes, I knew it. I knew he'd.
Heath's one of the only people I know who I think can do all the moves.
Yeah, and Shaman.
Ooh.
It's that, I think it's that, and I think Rach. Rach has got that dancer mobility. It's that unique kind of balance of strength and range of movement that they have that's really impressive. But they work really hard at it. I mean, Heath works really hard to keep that.
All right, still got a couple more questions. So if just say you're really good at riding a bike, like just say you're a competitive Olympic cyclist, or just say you're like a champion mountain bike racer, does that make you the best person to teach a young kid how to ride a bike?
Potentially not, because you might be a shit-house teacher.
Correct. Well, like even if you're just a regular person who can ride a bike without falling off, does that mean you're a good teacher of riding a bike?
No.
No, it's got nothing to do with it.
No, exactly.
All right. What about someone who's really good at writing? You're pretty good, right? You can write your name, can't you? Yeah. Yeah. So can you explain to me how to write?
No.
But you can do it. Surely that means you can teach it.
We get it, Raph. That's good.
Yeah. So it's like doing the thing and teaching the thing are just not the same skill. They're not the same skill. They're not the same skill. You can be skilled at one but not the other. You can be skilled at both, or you can be skilled at neither. And it's just like they're not the same skill.
It doesn't, one doesn't equate to the other.
Yeah, it's just not the same skill. And teaching, being a great teacher is a skill, and it's not the same skill as being a great doer, although just because you're a great doer doesn't mean you can't be a great teacher.
Correct.
But there's not a lot of overlap, right?
I love
like
it.
The greatest coaches of all time were not the greatest players of all time. Think of any sport, right? Often the greatest coaches were they were mediocre players, but they're amazing coaches, So it's like, and the best players aren't always the best coaches, So it's like, let's get over it. No, you don't have to be able to do all the freaking moves. Who cares? Fuck it.
Yay.
Yeah.
Just go out there and enjoy what you like. Enjoy the process of teaching. Like enjoy empowering your clients. That's the good stuff. Like that's the payoff. Let the other head fuckery just go, because all it's going to do is choke you from getting to follow your passion. Like what a waste What a waste.
That's not all it's going to do. It's also going to put obstacles in your client's way if you don't give them permission to learn an exercise simply because you can't do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's really, and it's funny because I hadn't reflected on it in that sense until today and talking through it like that.
That was a really good point you made.
And I'm like, yeah, you actually impact by you being in your head about that, you are impacting your client's progress.
Yeah.
And that's not cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good talk, Chloe.
Thanks, Raph.
See ya.